here's what we're planning to do in the next hour and a half. We have, I guess we've advertised till 8 o'clock, so an hour and a half. But last time we were finished a little bit earlier, so that's fine. We'll just go with wherever the conversation takes us. So let me start by just saying a few comments in regards to welcoming everyone. The first thing I'll mention is I guess I screwed up in the last video that we did, in the last conversation we had, and I gave you my wrong email address. So it's printed there. If you ever want to contact me, or if you ever want to pass this email on to friends of yours that you might think are interested in caricature carving, that is my email, and that's my home email, and it'll come to me, and I'll make sure that those people are on our distribution list. Okay, so sorry about that error last time. I'll also mention that, as I said earlier to the few that were on, I think we have 42 people now interested in the True North Caricature Carvers, which is great, and I hope that grows. That's kind of a fun number for our Zoom calls, but it'll be an awful lot of fun when we're able to get together and have that kind of a crowd, or smaller sets of crowds across the province, that we can enjoy each other's company and talk about caricature carvings and do caricature carvings. A reminder to the people who are new to this today, we're going to review a little bit of what we did last time. In particular, we're going to give Murray some time to talk about and remind us how Zoom works. Although we've been doing a little bit of that, we're going to give him a little time to remind us of that, so we'll just know, at least we'll get better at managing these Zoom calls. I'll also mention that, John, Paul, Andre, Mike Sullivan, and myself, Mark Sheridan, we were the three that initially got together to think about a caricature carving group for Canadian caricature carvers. Our idea behind that was simply to do something that was going to be some fun and to learn. And so we welcome absolutely everybody into this. You don't have to be dyed-in-the-wool caricature carver. You don't have to have a lot of experience. In fact, if you're just starting carving, we're really happy to have you involved in this, because we can all learn from one another. So, given that, every question, every comment you make is of value. There's got to be about 16 different ways to go about making a caricature carving. So, we're all ears, we're all interested in different people's perspectives, we're all interested in all questions. So let's be aware that it's just an open forum to have some fun with. So today's discussion, we want to pick up on some additional thoughts we have around some of the things we talked about last time. We're going to have the presenters from last time remind us of some of the things we talked about, and then field some questions. So as I said, we'll start off with Murray and get him to talk a little bit again about Zoom in general and how we can get better at using that. John's prepared to review some of the work that he did on his drawings of caricatures. And for those that were on the call last month, you recognize that John is a tremendous artist. And we're not going to learn to be able to do his kind of drawing overnight. It's going to take some practice. So he's going to review some of that and maybe advance it a little bit, stretch us a little bit this time. Mike's going to remind us a little bit about what he talked about in terms of modeling and sculpting beyond the drawing. I'm going to add a little bit to that, because I do the sculpting a little bit differently, very similar to Mike, but it's a different medium, a different type of sculpting goo that I use, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And so we'll do that in terms of just a review and questions of some of the things we covered last time, and then we're going to switch to the next step. We had said early on as a group that we wanted to take sort of a stepwise approach at how to make a caricature carving, and so the next step beyond the drawing and the sculpting is starting to rough in your carving, taking it to the bandsaw, roughing it in. And then following that roughing in process, how do you start adding detail, and how do you go about doing that? What are the different methods of doing that? So we'll try to get through all that tonight rather. In the last two items, the roughing in your carving and the adding detail, I did bring some presentation charts that I've used in previous presentations in talking about this. Now, Mike and John haven't seen those, and so this is unrehearsed. But they'll easily be able to add their comments into those pieces. even though it might look like a presentation, I don't want you to think of it as a presentation. Everybody's comments are appropriate. As Murray said earlier, a good way to manage Zoom is to mute your mic until you want to say something. And that way you don't hear the dog barking in the background and all the rest of it. And as soon as you have something to say, just unmute and speak up, and we'll give you the floor. Okay, sound reasonable, everybody, as an agenda?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's get started. Murray, I'm going to stop the screen share here so you can talk to us a little bit about Zoom again.
Again, if you're familiar with the Zoom or not familiar, either way, down at the bottom on a PC screen, bottom left side, you'll see the little microphone, and it's got the word mute below it. And you'll see probably as I talk, there's a green indicator of the volume. If you click onto the microphone, that will mute your mic. Now, Ken Naughton needs to mute his mic. I can see he's not muted. And Mike Sullivan should probably do the same. That's what you see, I can check you out there, boys. And if you look at the next icon to the right of it is a little video camera. And you can also do the same thing. If you happen to have forgotten your pants and you're sitting there in your underwear and you want to stand up to get a cup of coffee, please stop video because we will see what you're showing us. And the next one is over towards the middle. There's a screen or a share screen green icon with the arrow going up. To the left out is the word chat. Click on chat and you'll see a place for probably the right hand of your screen. It'll say type message here. And you can do the same thing to type that. Now we've got one more person in the waiting room. I have to talk and do this too. It's Craig Sefford's coming in right now. Okay, and as we do this kind of thing, you're being recorded right now. And when Mark says something that's kind of nasty, I go back when I'm making the video and I just nuke that nasty out of him.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're going to be busy, obviously.
I think that's it for now. If you have any questions, type them in, do that word chat again, and you can type the question that you have to the bottom right-hand side in case you forget. We'll try to remember to look at that when the discussions come up. So that's a great place to put, you have your input there. Thank you, Mark. Away you go.
Okay, thanks, Murray. So thanks for that reminder. Are there any questions for Murray or anything that you want to know about Zoom that we can get Murray's input on?
Just before you go further, I should make you one more mention here. Mark and really started this idea of let's put this on to a video and get this group. This is our, I think, your third meeting now. And what we have in doing this kind of thing, the group that are doing pyography, they're going to have a separate session. And then there's another group after that that's interested in just meeting together and talking. And we're going to call that Let's Talk. So those are coming up. We'll have, it's in the last email to you. And I think Stan mentioned the fact that the email came out, it was a big blank spot in the middle of the email. That was actually the poster copied in on that email. As I didn't show it when I get it also. So something to do with the way that they made their email up and when I forwarded it. So the attachment was the most important part to look at. It tells you a bit about it, but then you go to their website and they'll tell you everything. So that's it. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay. I like your Let's Chat thing, but you should call it Talking with Knives. Just a suggestion.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Okay, John Paul Andre, you're in here somewhere. There you are. I see your hands. So John, you're going to give us a little bit of a review what we talked about last time around drawing and maybe extend that a little bit. So, you know, this is the bit of, like, I'm in gallery view now, so I see everyone. But if you want to look at John Paul's pad of paper there and his pencil, go to that and pin that one, and then John will have the floor, okay?
And speaking of you is something to click on the top right-hand side. there's a little square there with view beside it, and you click onto that and then choose speaker view. That'll make sure it comes up with a full screen for you. Go ahead, John Paul.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm just going to review what we talked about last week and a couple other things too. So I had a few questions about side profiles and doing a side profile of a character and stuff like that. So we'll review that and then doing a body and how I work out the arms and legs. So same idea. We'll just, if anybody wants to try this with me, go ahead and get a piece of paper and pad. And if you got any questions, just ask me as we go. So we'll start out with the nose. So I'm gonna go do a long nose. So I'm gonna do a circle. A couple circles there. Attach the nose, put the nostrils in. Put the bridge in. 2 more circles for the eyes.
Go a little slower, John, because we have to look up and down.
Is it too small? Should I make it bigger?
No, it's okay. You might want to make it a little darker, but just go a little slower because we have to look down at our pad of paper than up at what you're doing.
Okay. Let's do a couple circles for eyes. And right across from the top of the eye, do a circle for the ears, the top of the ears. Like that. Then you got to decide how big of a chin you want. A long chin, you have a circle down here. Let's do it down here. We have a real big one, big jaw. So put a circle for the indication of the chin. Okay. And let's connect that up. Oh, do the cheeks. We've got the cheeks too. So we'll do a couple circles for the cheeks. And then we'll connect that up, go down around the cheek, both sides, go down to the chin. See, this is all interchangeable now. I whatever you want. Like it's fun just having it, doing different character faces and stuff. And I always look at like people with their mouths. What different wrinkles they have in their head, on their smile lines. So let's do an ear now. So I'm gonna draw the outside of the ear. Do the other side. Do the inside of the ear. From the middle of the ear, go up to the top of the head. A couple of lines for the smile line. Couple lines here. Do a neck. Put some hair in. Like that. Hair on the side. Eyebrows. Like I said before, this is the same way that I carve. This is as I'm drawing, I'm thinking how I'm carving. it's exactly the same way. I do the eyes. I want them to look this way. So if I want them to look that way, you'd go this way, the hump would go that way. Well, I'm going this way now. And then you can put any type of mouth, couple lines. So doing there's the front of the drawing. Now, if I want to do a side profile, I got to draw a skull. So I'm going to draw. If I had parameters too, if I only had a 2-inch board, I would put 2 lines. I would put 2 lines there, and I know that I couldn't go for any further than that. So I'm going to draw a circle like this. And go straight down from there. Straight up. There's the neck. I want to do a circle for the eyes. And then when you look on the side of the head, your eye is halfway in the back of your head. A lot of people have, like, their carvings are flat. Like, you can't see nothing. You can't see the side of the eye. You have to show the side of the eye. You got to show that the eye is halfway in the side of the head. So this guy's nose is like that. So I got a little notch here. And I know now the ear is where that little notch is on the back of your chin, or underneath your chin. There's a little notch there. Like that. That's where you put your ear. I can put a mouth. And from here. So that's his side profile. That's how I usually cut this out. If I want to make this guy, this is how I would cut it. I would cut this side profile out. And then I would carve it from there. Now doing a, go too fast?
No, I got it so far, but my side view didn't turn out too well. But
Okay. Here's some more side views. Same idea, the skull, and they can.
I just interrupt you for a moment. If you'd like to pin or to get a picture of this, push print screen on your computer, and it'll capture immediately a still shot of what John is writing.
now, John, on those side views, you wouldn't cut that out on the bandsaw with that level of detail, would you?
Oh yeah, that's how I do it.
Is that right? You'd
Yep.
cut the nose out like that on the bandsaw.
Yep, yep.
Oh, very good. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting.
So here's another picture how I did this guy's nose.
Yeah.
Here's a skull. I just did a skull. And there's a cheek. That's where the ear hole is. And the eye. So this guy, this is how I would cut this out. I would draw this out on I don't have any with me, but I would draw this out and then I would carve that from there. I would say that above you.
John, do you cut that right to the line?
Just not right on the line, but a little bit.
Okay,
But that's how I like this guy here. That's, I don't know if you can see that, but
Yeah.
that's how I do it. And that's, I would cut this side profile out and start carving. I would bring this to a 90 or a 45. And I start scooping out
okay,
like this guy. And then I can look at my other picture, like the front of this guy for the all the detail. This is how I do it. This is how you do a side profile. And then I can add on the nose, whatever nose. See, he had a long nose. You know, I could add a longer nose. But I got to remember how much wood I got. So if I only got this much wood, I can only put in that much of a nose. But if I have to, well, I'll have to get a bigger piece of wood. If I have a really long nose, you know. Well, that's how we do that part. Show you another technique I use for instead of clay modeling, I do a lot of clay modeling too, but I like to do drawings of what I want of motion. So I just always keep the pencil flowing, and I will just draw like a circle for the head. Then I got a circle for the neck. And then I do a chest. And you gotta study anatomy. You should know anatomy when you draw. You got when you're doing a caricature, you gotta know shoulders and widths and hips, and so I know I gotta use I want to do, see, his one arm's like this, so I have the shoulder. And see his arms, bicep, his elbow, forearm, wrist, his hand. And there's more circles than that for the fingers and everything. So, okay, see it now, the bicep here, elbow, forearm, one's going this way, one's going that way. Forearm, wrist, and hand. And you got ribs, hips, and thighs, knees, calves, ankles, and feet. So now all I gotta do is connect all this up. Just keep on drawing,
Within a clock.
keep on drawing. Draw it, put like clothes on them. So I want some clothes on them. Put some pants. This just gives me an idea what I want to do. I want to have an idea. But if I wanted to do a carving from this, and I'd have parameters, I guess only 2 inches or 3 inches, whatever, and I would draw that down, and I draw that carving in there and add on the arms, whatever. But that's how I do it. And here's the pants. But same idea. So to do the same thing, but let's see if I want them to run or walk, whatever. So head, neck, shoulder, shoulder, chest,
Watching you zoom.
bicep. Let's see if he does bicep, elbow. You have his arm down here, one up like a sword. His hands, his hips. And you can have his legs doing anything. You can have his legs over here, one over here. An ankle. It's like one of these little models you can buy. Same idea. You can just manipulate. But this, I find I like doing this way, just to, I get a feel how I want the carving to go. See if he's got his hand here, he's got a sword. He's got his hand on his hip. But all it is basically circles, and if I know I want the face going this way, so I'm gonna go like that. The head, turn the head here over here. And just connect it all up, put some pants on or shorts. These short sleeves. Any questions?
Thousands. How do you cut the blank out now? That's on, let's say, a 2-inch piece of wood. You've got that profile on there.
Yep.
You cut both at once, or cut a little bit through on one side then the other, or?
Oh, I see this head here is a fine example. I just cut the profile out,
Okay,
and I think it's 2 inches wide. Yeah, this one's 2 1/4 wide. And this is 2 inches thick, 2 inches this way.
yeah,
Yeah, I just cut the profile out. Then I start carving. I bring this up to the nose. I always bring this to the point. Like Walter Gretzky here.
so it's not a double cut.
No, this
On
is
the
side
back.
profile.
Okay,
But when you're doing these little sketches, it gets me familiar with my carving. So now I know, you know, I'll do a bunch of these drawings of the same posture that I want. And it helps me when I go ahead and carve it. And I go, oh yeah, I worked these little problems out and stuff.
John, I know of some carvers. Lynn Dowdy is one of them, and he'll make what you just did there. And when he comes across one that he really likes, that you know the proportions he really likes,
Yeah,
he'll put it on cardboard.
Yeah.
And he'll pin it. So he'll pin the shoulder, pin the elbow. So now he has something that he can move around and trace onto a piece of paper later.
Yeah, today I made this body. I needed this 2 inches wide. So I put a line down here and a line down here, and I drew this body. It's the body that I want for my next carving. And then, oh yeah, I wanted to show you too. It's in this book. Hold on a second. Too many books. Yeah, here it is. With these patterns that I have, the patterns that I make, this guy, all the same, like where is he? Here, same guy, same pattern. Now I can make him by taking that pattern. I can bring the feet over here. That I want us bending forward. So I draw that out up here like this. And then I turn that. Now I got a pattern of him going forward. Or if I want him back a bit or just a little bit, you know, grabbing something, I'll just draw his feet in where I want to station, and then move it a little bit. And same pattern. I can take that same pattern and make him and walk or run. The same pattern. Like I can do that to all of them. But if I want them stationary, stop my straight up and down, just go like this, draw it out on my piece of wood. But for these patterns that I use, I go 2 inches wide and 3 inches wide, 3 inches thick, or 2 inches thick and 3 inches wide. So this guy was 3 inches wide and 2 inches thick. That's this one. That's how I get to my, that's how I do that. How I draw these things out.
It takes practice, right, John?
Yeah, it takes lots of practice. And I find, like I said before, I find I draw, once I start drawing better, I carve better. And the more you draw, the better the carver you're gonna be. Any questions? Pretty quiet crowd.
That's great, John. No, that was a really good review. Thanks very much. That's something, like you say, we just gotta sit down and practice these things. That's great.
Thank you.
John, would you when you're drawing a profile, would you do it up beside the face on the front view so that you get the exact the nose and everything in the exact proportion?
That's right. That's what I do. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, John.
Okay.
Okay, Mike, you want to give us a little reminder of the sculpting piece that you did last month? And if anybody wants to go to Mike's or to John's thing, and you can remove the pin there and see everybody. And then you can go to Mike's picture and pin him, and then he'll have the floor.
Okay. I'm going to start with the clay that I use. This is it here. It's called Plastilina. I get it at Michael's. I got it in the States. I don't know what they have here, but they probably have some sort of modeling clay like this at the Michael's once they are open again. It's not too, it's kind of tough to get anything right now with supplies. But before I get to that, I do want to show something that I have here.
Nice.
Now, this is if you can see it now, this is a side profile. I can move and bend the arms and legs on here. And this gives you a rough idea of where you can put everything to cut it out. This is one of my go-to pieces. Just thought I'd like to show that to go along with what John was talking about with his patterns and such. This is something that helps me out on the way too. It was just made out of an old cereal box. So back to our clay model. I use either 12 or 14 gauge house wiring. I don't try to strip the coating off of it or anything. I make the armature. This is the armature, the little stick figure, basically. I mount it on a 4x4 block of wood. It's about 1.5 inches thick. So it goes on there. I add the clay onto it to build the model. And this was the model that I showed last month in its place. I like to do the movement. Mark was saying he liked to put a lot of detail into his. I I sometimes put a lot of detail, but most of the time it's more or less for where the arms and legs and body are going to be situated in that carving. And I thought I'd like to show you this because this is that clay model carved out of wood and finished.
Yep.
And that is one block of wood. No ads. I didn't cheat.
We'll teach you better. You just hang in there.
But anyways, you know, that's about all I have to say about it. Just a quick response. I use different types of little picks and pieces to model, to push the clay into place. I think, Mark, you had something about what you wanted to talk to about the clay too, so.
Yeah, well, I do it very
Thank you.
similar. I do it very similar to what Mike does. So I'll just show a share screen here. And this should show up on your thing. I think it should show up on your thing. I don't know why I keep losing the place here.
Mike, you can also buy that plasticina on Amazon.ca.
Oh, you can? Have
Yes,
you
I bought-
purchased any?
Yes,
And have you tried it?
not the newest batch, no.
Oh, okay.
Is there a problem?
No. No, I'm just asking if you've tried to make a clay model yet or seen how it went.
Yes, I have, but I haven't used the most recent stuff I got. I'm reusing some older stuff.
Okay, can you guys see the chart that I just put up? Can you see that clearly?
Patterns and modeling.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so you know what what I'm saying here is just kind of picking up on what where Mike was, but from the standpoint of like backing up. Sometimes you just don't need a model; you can just use pattern, as John was showing. I tend to think about the grain direction at this point, as I'm sure Mike must as well. But you know, Mike tends to do most of his carvings out of one block of wood, whereas I'll use different pieces to attach to make sure the grain is going in the strongest direction. But I'm sure, Mike, at the same time, you're making sure that you're not making a piece that is going to easily break off.
Well, see, that's one of the things with my, I try to find spots where I can have there's no limbs just sort of hanging there.
Right, right.
It does have its support and its strength still.
Yeah, so you really have to think about the grain direction at this point of pattern and modeling. And so when you have something simple to do, you can draw a pattern on a piece of paper and take that to the bandsaw. And I think Dave was asking earlier about to John how you take this on the bandsaw. So here's a very simple pattern. So it's a little basset hound puppy in a bag, if you want, a party bag. And so you see the front view and the side view on a piece of wood. Now, can you guys see my arrow here? Up and down? Can you see me moving that?
Yep.
Yeah.
So my first cut on the bandsaw would make a straight cut right down here, okay? And the second cut on the bandsaw would be cut that piece off. And so now I'd have a nice rectangular square cross section piece of wood to deal with. And then
Like that articulating cardboard cutout, you use that for any carving?
I use it just for carvings with action because that way I can get the legs bent, the arms bent to where I want them. The standard stand-up carving, I will just draw it out. I only use the clay when it's a more, there's more movement in it.
So that
It's not worth it to,
so that cardboard if you extend the arms and the legs, so that is the limit to your size of your wood, correct?
It's actually more than the limit, but you know, you're not gonna have your arms straight out on this anyways. That, the grain there would be so weak that that arm would break off while you were trying to carve it.
Oh, okay.
So you try to keep it close to the body
Yeah.
so that you don't end up with, you know, pieces that break off when you're trying to carve it.
Or Mike, you might go over to the dark side and find another piece of wood to glue on.
I don't think so, Murray. What happened to Mark, Murray?
He's not come back in again. He clicked himself out.
You
Tell us
folks
more, Mike.
were, this is Stan. You folks were talking about that plasticine a while ago. I picked this up on Amazon, and I think it was about 25 or 30 bucks. It's 5 pounds.
Move it more to your
I made
left.
this one little model just off of a corner of what there is there. So, you know, this stuff is really cheap, and it was on, I think I got it on Amazon. They've got the bricks for, I think there's 1 pound bricks, and you probably get about 2 of these things in it. And this stuff really lasts a long time. I've had it sitting around. This one's been sitting around now for about 3 weeks, and it's hard, but as soon as I start working it, it's going to get real pliable again.
Well, I have some that's 10 years old and I'm still using it. That's
Yeah,
how,
it's wonderful stuff. Anyway, just a thought, good stuff, and it's not expensive.
Dan, can you hold the block of wood up again so we can see it? Hold it still, right in front of your face.
The block?
Yeah, see what the label, what it says on it.
turn it to the other side, looking at, so we get to see the label.
Move it to your left.
Left?
Yeah, and you got to talk at the same time so we can see you.
Okay, so it's called plasticina. Like I said, I think this was 25 or 30 bucks with free delivery on Prime. So it's now that we don't leave home anymore, we get everything delivered. So yeah, there's a lot of clay in there. I mean, but you can buy, I think it's probably proportionate by cost to buy, you know, a quarter of it. So not very expensive at all. Like I said, this one was around 30 bucks, 25, 30 bucks.
It's strange that they actually say that it's gluten-free.
Well, I tried it. It doesn't go down very well with a beer.
Yeah. But I guess, you know, with different allergies, I guess they have to include that in their statement, right?
Yep.
Protection.
Or you need a stronger fluid.
It's made in Thailand.
The stuff that I have is from Cucamonga, California.
All right, so what I was saying is that on the bandsaw, on this, I would take the easiest cut. I'd cut along in this direction here, and then this part would fall away, right?
Yep.
And then what I do is I just take a dab of white glue between this piece that I just took off and the mating piece, and I just put 1 dab of glue there, stick it back on. Then I'd do the same thing on this side. That piece would fall away. I'd put a dab of glue to glue it back on. Now I still maintain the squareness of the whole thing, right? Now I can turn it 90 degrees, draw the other picture, the side view on it, and then cut away that. Now I've drawn this on it or use the piece of paper. Now I'm cutting away all of this on the bandsaw. I cut all the way around. This half falls away, that half falls away, but this thing is still glued in here. So I just take a hammer and knock that, and all of a sudden I've got a perfect 3-dimensional block cut in both directions.
Well, I guess it's gluten-free then.
It's gluten-free, exactly
Yeah.
right. Okay, so that's the way I do it. Some people do the same thing and just wrap it with masking tape and put it back on the bandsaw. But the bottom line is that once you cut one of these pieces, now you've got an irregular side that you can't lay down flat on the bandsaw. And so you've got to attach that in some ways so you can turn it 90 degrees and cut the other side, right? So that's how I handle a simple pattern. A more complex pattern, that's when I'd use clay modeling. So whereas Mike used the plasticine, I use this air dry clay. You can see it's $15. I think I got this one at Amazon, but you can get it at pretty much any art store as well. It's a latex, kind of a gooey clay. The downside of using this, unlike Mike's, is that this stuff dries out. And so it'll dry out, it'll crack, and it'll fall apart. So you only use it for as long as you need it to make your pattern and cut it out of wood. What I do is whenever I do a clay model using this type of clay, every night before I go to bed, I take like a bounty sheet, a white paper sheet from the kitchen. I soak it in water. I drape it over the clay. I put a grocery bag upside down over that, and it keeps the humidity in, and it'll keep that clay as moist as for as long as you want to use it. But I do throw them away afterwards. So at some point they dry out and they're gone. Now, where do I use that? So you guys have seen this carving of mine. The guy in this carving is probably 8 inches tall, so he was a good size. And I wanted him to have this really odd posture, like he's under a real load of furniture. And so this is where I use the clay. And just as Mike does, I used household electrical wire. I did strip it down because these clay models, or these models, I think Mike might be a little bit taller than the ones you would typically do. So I just needed a little bit more strength. And so what I do is I take two strands of the copper wire and I twin them together. So I twist them together. And so that basically doubles its strength. It makes the copper model really strong. The way I do that is I strip the wire and then I fold it. So there's a loop at one end. The opposite end, the two free ends, I chuck into my battery operated drill. So I might have a 2.5 foot length of two strands of wire. Then I drive a nail into my workbench and I put the looped end around that nail, and then I just turn on the drill. I just turn on the drill slowly and it starts twisting until you get them nicely twisted together, okay? And then that gives me the double ply, if you want, and the stronger armature. So give that a try if you want to make an armature. You can see here, Mike used tie wraps, which is a great idea. I never thought of that. I just soldered it together, and then I can reuse pretty much that armature, straighten it out, and use it several times. The thing I mentioned to people here on this particular slide is that the first time I made the clay model, he wasn't hunched up enough. He didn't really give me the impression that he was under a heavy load. And so because it's wet, and you could do this the same as Mike could do with his plasticine, you can just take your hand and push it down. You can mold it a little bit, even though you've got it around the armature, you can move it a bit without breaking it until you get exactly the right look of the guy. Mike also mentioned that he uses his just for the structure, and I understand that. I usually put a little bit more detail in, especially around wrinkles, because when I'm looking at my wood carving, as I'm carving it, it's easy for me to make a mistake of where the wrinkles should go. And so I'll try it first in the clay, play around with it a little bit, using much of the same tools as Mike showed you that he uses. And then I know where the wrinkles ought to go when I go to carve it. Another area where I've used clay modeling is when I've been asked to actually do a face of a person. So this is a neighbor of mine asked me to do a caricature carving of her husband, who's a guitar player. And so that's his face. And so rather than try to do it in wood and get it right the first time, I did it about 3 times in clay until I got it right. And so now I had a 3-dimensional model of his face to do the carving against. And then the last one I'll show you in terms of clay modeling is this one. So you may have seen the carving of my hockey player. this was a really hard one to do because he's hunched over the boards. His shoulder pads are up. I didn't know really how to get the look of the arms and the wrinkles, and clay really helped me. So in this case, like John was telling you, he does the head first. I was able to take that head and just sink it into the clay and make the clay model around it. Okay, so that's what I'd add to the whole notion of clay modeling. Any comments on that?
The clay model is just for visual reference. You don't do any tracing from it, correct?
Well, yeah, I do the initial bandsaw cut from the clay model. And so people were talking about different ways of doing that. Mike can describe the way that he does it, which is kind of interesting. Some people just shine a light at it and then put a paper in beside it and trace around that. And now you have, you know, both the side view and the front view of your clay model. And others use other methods. Mike, you want to describe the method that you use?
Okay, well, this is the actual trace out of that guy with his foot in the concrete. What I do is I have this pencil that I've thinned down so it's basically almost the lead. And I will lay that clay model down on its back, balance it, and with the paper underneath, actually trace around that clay model to get to, this is the front view. And this is the actual side view. And then from that, I will cut it out. I'll put that on my block of wood, give it a bit more space around that pattern because I don't want it precise, and then carve from that
Okay.
after the cutout.
Okay, Mike, with your clay models, when you did the guy in the concrete, do you reuse that clay model and sculpt it to the next one, or do you just leave that alone and make another one?
I have a few actual extra ones now because this is my next project. So he's already done in clay. I have enough clay to do probably about 10 or 20 of these. So I'm not going to destroy them right away. I like to keep them around to show people from this, I got that type of thing.
Yep.
So this is that guy pulling the sword out of the stone. And this is that guy, as far as I got so far.
Yeah. Excellent.
Can you believe that this is gone again on me?
Yeah, you froze. You can hear you, Mark.
Question, Mark, or is there somebody else speaking?
No, I'm done. Thanks. Go ahead.
Question with respect to that frame that you're building out of wire. You carve typically with components and assemble them, the heads typically separate and so on. How do you
Mark's
deal with
gone.
that with that wire frame? Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question because, you know, with mine, I'm doing the one piece. Well, he's adding arms or legs or the head separately. Yeah, that is a really good question. How does he use that to create his carving?
Yeah, you'd have to cut the components off because he showed one piece as a frame, and now he's trying to create multiple pieces out of it.
Yeah.
Got a secret somewhere.
I think he would take the straight of grain and go with the direction of the grain for as he pieces things together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes
still,
sense in that respect, but
But it's still the fact is that he's using that as a model, but his arms and that are separate. So like with mine, I'm creating that one piece. So I know that the arms are going to be in a certain spot and everything else, but he's going to actually carve them separately because he wants the strength of the grain with going with the flow of the arms and legs and everything. So how does he use that to create his carving? That's, I think, what Stan is asking as well.
yeah,
Mike, if I could suggest something here, what I've done, I work somewhere between Mark and John Paul. I do the sketches and get my pattern ready to cut out from that drawing. And then I cut the head off, draw the neck a little longer, and position it over top the body. It shows me where to put the hole, and my heads then turn according to whatever position I want it to be in.
Hey, can I tell you something, Murray?
Yeah.
It looks like you're on a Japanese movie because your lips aren't moving with your voice.
Yeah, you guys are all the same. There's something wrong with the internet tonight for everybody.
Just another thought that I've used in the past for other things that I've done. I'm a draftsman by profession, and when I'm trying to do some drawings that are different or difficult, what I use is a light table. And if you folks haven't done one of those, they're real easy to make. A pane of glass or plastic, and put it just above your particular layout of your clay, and put the light underneath of that. It'll shine right through and give you an exact positioning. And then you just put a piece of paper on the top, and you can draw that positioning right on a piece of paper. It makes it deadly accurate.
I also use a Verner's, like a caliper.
Yeah, just a little more work on that one. Yeah.
So yeah, take the measurement, then go put it on the piece of wood, right? You know exactly how big the arm is. You know, you over here, the head. You know, I use this a lot too. Like when I'm doing the nose or the face. If I'm doing the face, I'll take the width of the nose over here, and I'll bring it over here. Okay, yeah, all that, back and forth. So I use this too.
What I've done with after a clay model to get a pattern on paper, I've actually set the clay model up and taken a photograph of it from the front and from the side, and then I insert that picture into a Word document, and that will allow me to either expand it or make it a little smaller, and
Nice.
then it works fine.
Nice.
The one thing you have to remember is when you take your photograph, you can't get right on top of it. It distorts it a bit. So you take a high resolution and keep your camera back about 3 or 4 feet.
Okay, so thanks for continuing on. So let's talk a little bit about roughing in the carving, and hopefully you're able to see that screen share. Can you see that okay?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so roughing in the carving. So just as a reminder, this is the way that I tend to do my carvings, and you know, I think John and Michael agree that we tend to start with the head of the carving. Mike, of course, doesn't do it in this way where the head is separate, but you know, the notion is that when you start with your head, then if it doesn't turn out well, start another head. You haven't ruined the entire carving. Because remember, with caricature carvings, like most carvings, people look at the head first, and in the head, they look at the eyes first. So those are two things you want to get fairly right. But in terms of roughing out, this is how I start. So this was going to become a cowboy sitting at a bar stool. And so you can see my roughing out process. I use the head. I drill a little hole in the roughed out body. I start to orient the head to understand what it's going to look like. Then I start to add details. You can see the left-hand side, the detail of the scarf and whatnot. On the right, you can see the beginning of a roughed-in hat. So, you know, I'll come back and talk about the notion of trying to understand which way the grain is going. This hat, the crown and the brim are separate to give it the greatest strength. And then when it's all together, you can see the brim of the hat is very thin. It's not paper thin, but it's very thin. But because I oriented the grain from top to bottom, like in and out of the carving, it's probably got the greatest strength that I could muster, at least for that thin of brim. And then you start adding the detail beyond that. And so a couple of things come to mind when I think about roughing out your idea, and you guys can kind of chip in with your thoughts as you go along. The initial shaping is really important, and you know, you have to rough it down from that initial bandsaw cut to something that starts to look like a three-dimensional carving. And I find that can be kind of hard on your hands and your arms. Um, it's a lot of heavy carving with a fairly large knife. And if you're prone to like tennis elbow or golfer's elbow, that could start to become a bit of a bother. And so, I always say, think of all of the tools that can assist you in that. So Typhoon Bits are one way to manage that. They're a bit that goes into a Fordham tool. But think of all the tools that you have at your disposal to do the initial roughing in. So here's an example of Typhoon Bits. Typhoon, I think, is made by Fordham. There's another bit that is exactly the same. I think they're called Sabertooth. They're basically a bit of a variety of different contours with fine carbide pins all over them that take away wood in a real big hurry. And so you can see the bandsaw basset hound in the bag at the top. And then you can see after just a few minutes of roughing in, you're able to really get a contour of the approximate contour of what your final carving is going to look like. The warning I always give with this, and you probably heard me say it a few times, really suit up. Like put gloves on, make sure you got heavy sleeves on, safety glasses, dust mask. These carbide bits are really aggressive, and if you touch them against your skin, you'll go right down to the bone before you can pull them away. So be very, very careful with carbide bits. A picture of a tool that I don't have a picture of the tool that I'm about to mention, but it's called a Proxon Tool, and it's basically the size of a hand drill, if you want, but it has a reciprocating end to it. And so you can put in gouges of various sizes and descriptions in it, almost like you'd put an X-Acto blade and an X-Acto knife. You turn this thing on, it's almost silent, but when you actually push against a piece of wood, it starts to reciprocate. And that reciprocating action will take that blade through basswood like it's butter. So again, when you're thinking about the roughing in process and, if you're trying to protect your arms from getting sore, think about those kinds of things. I'll mention Neil Cox here. He's a tremendous artist here in Canada, probably one of the best artists in the world. He's right-handed, and he actually uses his left hand for roughing in because he wants to protect his right hand. He wants to keep his right hand years to come to do the details. So think about those things as you're roughing in the different tools you have available to you. Another tool, I have a very small lathe, and so I was making these caricatures of Stanley Cup. And so after I took it from the bandsaw, I did the concentric circles, if you want, of the Stanley Cup on the lathe. And so that really cut down on the amount of cutting I had to do with my arms. It made those concentric rings very, very accurate. And so just another example of use the tools that are available to you to help you with the roughing in process. Okay, you guys jump in anytime, right? I tend to leave, sorry? I tend to leave too much wood during rough out. And I think most people are in that sort of situation. But if you're in doubt, leave some excess wood. Remember when you're roughing out a caricature, you start with something that's pretty square or angular off the bandsaw. And sometimes when you look at some of your original caricature carvings or somebody who's just starting into caricature carving, you can see that they were very, very shy about taking out wood. And it still looks kind of squarish after they've done the carving. They've taken the edges off of it, but it doesn't have the roundness because they were concerned about taking away too much wood. Try to fight that tendency. We all have that tendency when we're roughing out, but think about your carving coming out as pretty round. Like when you take a look at your chest or your arms, everything's round. There's very few flat surfaces. And so if you were to draw a line down the middle of the body of your carving, you can carve round right to that line. You can round right to that line. You don't have to stop an inch on each side of that line. Come right to that line and make it nice and round, and that'll give you the roundness that you need when you go to do your detailing. If you don't go after that roundness when you're roughing out, you'll find that you put in all the hours of detailing and you put in beautiful detail, and then you look at it again and say, geez, I wish I had made that a little rounder. It looks a little squarish. The detail's great, but it looks a little squarish. John, were you going to say something about that? I see you with your carving there.
Yeah, same. Like when I do a carving, nothing is straight. I'll always like narrow here, always roundness, and nothing. I don't have nothing straight up and down. Like everything's like I've noticed in carving shows, like some of these legs are just straight up and down.
Mhm.
You look at your legs in your pants, like they're wider here, and where your knees are, it goes a little bit wider, than around here it goes a little narrower. So you gotta have that contouring in all the everything, like everything, all the head, the neck,
Mhm.
there's nothing straight.
But if you look at John's carving there, you can see there's like even along the back, there's really not a flat spot. You've kind of got a concave at the back, and that's what you're looking for. All curves, all having some flow to it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then the last point I'd make about roughing out is this is the point where you're making some good decisions on how strong the wood sculpture becomes. So as Mike said earlier, he does his carvings in one piece of wood, and he watches pretty closely to make sure if an arm is out, it's leaning against something to give it strength. And so I do the same thing in terms of worrying about the strength of the carving, but I'll do it so that the grain is oriented in its strongest direction. So here a little beaver, I was making a caricature of a little beaver. And so if I had made this particular beaver standing like that, not on a base, with the grain just going up and down, the grain through its tail would all be cross grain. And so if that was all of a sudden carved down to maybe 3/16 of an inch, that's something that could snap off fairly easily. So here's an example where I took that tail and I took it out of another piece of wood and made sure that the grain was going left to right. You could still break the tail if you were really intent on doing it, but it'd be a lot harder to do with the grain going in the right direction. Same thing with the hat that I showed you earlier. So the hat was done so that the crown of the hat, the grain is going up and down. Now, it's unlikely you're going to break the crown of that hat. I mean, it's a pretty bulky piece of wood, but the brim of the hat is something that you could snap if the grain, again, was going in this direction, up and down. Because when you got to a very thin section around here, it'd be pretty easy to snap that brim off. So in this case, I made sure the grain ran lengthwise. And so I do the two pieces separately, and then they're glued together later. And that's kind of what they look like later. And you can make that brim pretty much as thin as you want because that grain is going in that direction. Okay. You know, the other thing that I think about my carvings, and this is a picture of the back end of that guy that's carrying that load of wood. The dog was put there for interest, but that dog is also the third leg of that carving, giving it strength. If I had just left the carving to the guy's two legs on the ground, you know, it wouldn't have been a very strong carving. But the fact is, the way I designed it is I made sure that dog was doweled to that box that the guy's carrying. There is a hardwood dowel running inside that sack of dog chow right down into the dog's mouth. So there's a hardwood dowel you don't see in here that's running all the way down here. And that gives the carving strength. So again, as you're thinking about your carving, you're designing your carving, you want to think at the roughing in stage, how can I make this carving as strong as I possibly can? Okay.
I have a question.
Understood.
Go ahead, Dave.
Do you ever carve anything without a pattern? Just grab a block of wood and carve, or have you ever?
To be honest with you, you know, I was interested in listening to John because I never carve the head off of a pattern. The face and the head, I just start carving. And I'll show you what the blank I use looks like, but it looks nothing like what you see in this carving. And, you know, I admire John for the way he does it. for the very reason that when I carve a head like this, I really don't know what it's going to end up like. I just start carving.
Right.
I know generally how big the nose is going to be in the ears and all the rest of it, but the actual look of it at the end is as big a surprise to me as it is to the carving. And I find like the couple that I've done of people have asked me to do a caricature, then I find that really, really difficult. And John obviously is very good at that. He's able to draw something and then carve it into the wood. I very, very rarely use a pattern for the head,
Okay.
but
When you're doing a carving of somebody, you have to get a side profile.
yeah,
You have to have a side profile. That shows all the character, all the lines, like the nose, the jaw shape. You have to have a side profile if you
Okay.
want to look like somebody.
Yeah, exactly. The reason I asked, I got a couple blanks from Mike Sullivan. This one here, I don't know whether you can see it.
Yep.
That is out of one blank. Now this guy here, same blank, and I had no idea what I was carving, but just went ahead and started carving.
Yeah.
All one piece. Right or wrong, I mean, I feel comfortable doing that. I'm not an artist like John Paul is. Trouble drawing a stick man, but
Well, that's what this is, a stick man.
yeah, exactly. I mean, you make it look so simple, but
Practice.
yeah, practice. But I find the
but again,
carving,
Dave, like we were saying earlier, there's probably about 5 to 15 different ways to do a caricature carving, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you might find starting with a drawing or a clay model will lead you to something different. Sometimes you just pick up something off the bandsaw and just be creative with the knife, and that'll be the way it evolves, right?
yeah, I don't know whether these guys could see that, these plastic army men when we were kids.
Yeah.
My son's in the army, he said, Dad, I want you to carve me a caricature.
Nice.
Very nice.
Well, that was relatively no pattern. I just got a block of wood, traced the pattern out. Oh, it's probably too much light.
No, see perfectly.
And the gun, I just went on internet. We talked about that last month. Got a picture of a rifle that the Canadian Forces used, and
Perfect.
that's what I did.
Yeah, so just hold that up again, Dave.
You'll have to say something, Dave, to make yourself appear.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, yeah. So like just turn it sideways and look at the head, John. Like that's really well done in terms of where the eye placement is, as you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still struggling with faces and hands, but I'm getting there, I think.
Yeah, I like the eyes on it. I like the eye, the side profile of the eye. That looks good.
Yeah, that's a lot of help from Mike Sullivan. Mike and I carve, well, we used to carve a couple times a week, but Mike's given me a lot of good insight.
Is the caricature all one piece?
It is
Or-
all one, well, the gun is separate,
Gun separate, yeah, okay, yeah. But you did that one piece of wood.
one piece of wood, yes.
Okay,
Mark,
John.
I'd like to, Mark, if I can, sorry, want to share a tool with you folks if you've never used one for roughing out. And this particular one is called a Dremel. What they are high velocity tools on which you put these blades on the end. And these were originally developed by a company by the name of Fine, F-E-I-N. And what they are designed for is doing trim work. So from my construction days, we used to use these to trim off the bottom of moldings as they're coming along the side of a door. You just take them to the floor, and then you come along later and just trim that off when you're putting the rugs underneath and so on. These are incredible tools for roughing out. If you're trying to get between the arm and the body, between the legs into rough spots that you're trying to get at, this is a plunge cutter. So you just plunge this tool in and the vibration cuts right through very, very rapidly. And I've used it on every type of wood. I also use it on metal with metal blades and other items. If you haven't invested in one of these, you'll probably find, you can buy them real cheap at Canadian Tire, but that's exactly what they are, is cheap. Or you can get the fine tool, or you can get the Dremels. Incredible tools.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Here's an Armature that I have. It's a carving blade.
Ooh.
That's
Yeah,
where,
I've got one like that with blades as well.
Mhm.
So that's a reciprocating blade, John. that
yeah, it
goes
goes up and down, yeah, back and
Yeah.
forth. As soon as you
And
touch
this
the,
one is vibration.
yeah. Same thing, as soon as you touch something, then it goes. It's still right now, like say if it's plugged in. As soon as you touch a piece, then it vibrates back and forth. So that thing works really well. Like for chainsaw carving, big stuff.
But even
Just
for,
wanted to share that thought. It's a great tool.
yeah, even for small stuff like the tool stands using what John just showed you, like again, it just saves your arms, and you're able to, save your arms to be able to do the detail work for decades to come, hopefully.
But even on big stuff, it's great for polishing areas that you're trying to get around and do
Yeah.
grooves. Wonderful.
Okay, folks, that takes us to 8 o'clock. We got through quite a bit tonight. Next time we're together, we'll talk a little bit about detailing in the carving. And then what we would like to do is sort of the next part in the sequence is painting, which will probably take some considerable amount of time to talk about the different ways of painting the carving. So that's kind of it for tonight.
Does anybody have any ideas? Any different ideas of what they want?
I do.
Yeah,
John Paul, you do chainsaw carving?
yes, I do.
I'd really like some insight on some chainsaw carving. I've done two now. And I'd like to do some wood spirits.
Yeah, okay, no problem.
I picked up a couple 4-foot logs, probably, I don't know, 10 to 12 inches in diameter of basswood. And the one that I did do, I'm not happy with it. It didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. Probably because of the portion of the eyes and being so big. So maybe something along that line.
Yeah, I can talk about that next week or next month. I mean,
Sure.
we can do a little demonstration. I'll show you. I
That'd
got a
be
few.
great.
I got one right in the front yard. Big wood spirit.
Actually,
This is
maybe
Rich-
what I'll just interject and say is this is, as Murray was saying earlier, we've got a pyrography group coming on board fairly soon too. So it'd be nice to use that suggestion as a way to maybe have a cottonwood bark carving group if you want to do sort of that mythical faces, or even a chainsaw carving group.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to see that kind of thing. Now, Murray, that would give us maybe 3 or 4 different themes that people are getting together on a monthly basis to focus on.
This
Yeah,
is Richard calling through. I've got about 8 sticks downstairs that are 8 to 10 years old that are good shapes for canes. I found a piece of wood that has a shape to it that would make a cane. The character faces that you're doing, I would like to be able to address how to do that into a cane handle or something like that. That's not something that it may be a niche group and it may be something down the road, but I'm wondering if that's something you might want to consider, looking at the whole process of cane making from taking. Do you do like the Americans and take the bark off, or do like the Brits do and leave the bark on? Depending on which book you've picked up. So I'm wondering if that's something down the road that you might think about. Thank you.
Certainly.
We have a question also from 042306, and I don't know what your name is, but the question is, will you be touching on sharpening.
Good idea.
Yeah,
That's a great idea. We'll make sure we dial that in. Yeah, certainly, you know, the next thing we wanted to talk about next time we're together is we'll start at least with the detailing piece.
It's 8 o'clock.
And the first thing you have to really deal with detailing is having a super sharp knife, or else you're going to get nowhere. So maybe we should just include that right at the front end of our next session.
Good plan.
Is there anybody that is particularly good at sharpening that would like to volunteer to take that on as leading the discussion?
I just always batted my eyelashes and somebody did it for me.
Very good.
Can't
I'd
do
like-
that now.
I could suggest that if we invite Kevin Reed for that part of the meeting,
Good idea.
Kevin probably spends, he said, 20%, 25% of his time at night sharpening before he starts to carve.
Mhm.
And
Does anybody-
the chip carving that he does is excellent that way. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Does
let's-
anybody use scalpel blades?
Yeah.
I use scalpel blades a lot. I buy them at a surgical supply place, and they work out to about 25 cents or 20 cents a piece. And there is no sharpening involved.
Yeah, and they're strong enough.
Well, you just, depending upon the wood that you're carving, I'll carve anything from basswood right up to lignum vitae. And you just, you take smaller chunks. I just finished doing a piece on some old apple wood I got from a guy up the road. And that surprisingly was incredibly hard, but you just take smaller chunks and you break the blades, and that's part of the, but you don't spend any time sharpening your chisel.
There's along those lines, there's a super carver, a master carver, Lynn Dowdy down in the States. He uses a Stanley knife. And for the same reason, he just throws away the utility blade when he's finished, and he doesn't have to sharpen.
Yeah.
Okay, well, listen, we'll include sharpening at the front end of when we start the discussion next month about detailing, and that'll be a good lead into that, okay? So thanks very much tonight. Sorry about the difficulties I had on my end. I'll phone Bell this morning and tell them how upset everybody was.
We want our money back.
Yeah, that's
We had a lot of fun making jokes about you.
yeah, I'll bet there was a lot of good jokes. I got to be watching the video very closely.
Stop getting stuck in that clay.
Yeah.
During the time you were away, we tried to convince Mike Sullivan to become on the darker side.
Yeah, it didn't work.
Yeah, you can't move him.
No,
Nope, not gonna happen.
no. And the sad part is he's already influenced Dave Honkoop, which is really sad. We weren't able to get to Dave early enough. Okay, thanks a lot, everyone. It looks like we've kind of fallen into the third week of the month, so expect that, and I'll send out a note in that regard, okay?
Sounds
Thank
good.
Thanks,
you.
Mark.
Okay, take
Thank
care,
you.
everybody. Nice seeing you.
Good night, everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Stay sharp.